have a stake in the results of this study, and I think the parts that we all either individually or collaboratively put together. For those of you that may not know me, my name is Sharon Nelson, and as someone reminded me this evening, I'm older than the building, so welcome. I've been on this board for a very long time, and I'm happy to say I was one on the board when we hired Kevin Malloy, because much of what we've accomplished has been through his good leadership. We're glad you're here. We're glad our consultant is here to kind of lead us through this. I'm very, along with our board, grateful for our commissioner, Mr. D'Agostino, for representatives from Lancaster City, Ambridge Hospitality, Lancaster City Alliance, History of Lancaster.org, and their magic project that's going to evolve behind me within the next year or so. We have LCCA board members, but many of them are straggling in or send their regrets. Tom Showers, Patrick Snyder, Darcy Pollock, Ted Darkus, Scott Bowser, Zach Pearson, and our solicitor, Julie Miller, who hangs with us frequently, and Mr. Steve Geisenberger, who has guided us through some of our more challenging financial changes. So with that, I would like to open this up to Mr. Malloy.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you all for being here. As Sharon was saying, a little background. When we opened up in 2009, the convention center, and I think Josh will attest to this, we would sign any event that we could do safely and could pay for it. We've come a long way, Josh. Similarly, we didn't know what was best practice for a community, for a convention center at that time, though there was great demand for downtown, for businesses starting up, and there was great investment. We just hadn't looked at best practices to best use this convention center and leverage it for its economic impact, as we are trying to do with today's presentation. If you remember Vine Street, this stretch all the way from St. Mary's on Prince, all the way up to that started in 1841 to the first community credit union on the corner of Duke, which opened up this summer. There's a great opportunity as we look at Vine Street. Where are we today? Willow Valley has opened up their food hall, which has been great since day one. Mosaic Residential Community is coming in across the street on Queen Street. We all read in the newspaper this past weekend of the great project that Lancaster History is doing, and they'll open it by the time Dad turns, 156, something like that? I'm joking about that. But it will be opening for his birthday in 2025. And we in Commons on Vine, sorry, Tom. we on Commons on Vine are looking to best utilize this space, which was originally thought to be a registration area. So we've come a long way. The convention center operation under Josh's leadership right now in 2022 did 99% of its 2019 attendance, and 2023 is off to a robust start and with our best first quarter we've ever done for attendance. 2023 in its entirety is looking to have the greatest number of priority events, those events that spill over attendees into other lodging besides the Marriott at Penn Square. So with all of that, let's get to the introduction. Tonight, we're gathered to hear a presentation on Lancaster's Convention District Future Study. The LCCA is grateful to have Tyler Othen, Director of Convention, Sport and Leisure, to present his findings. Tyler has served as project manager for over 130 convention and visitor industry assessments. He's led efforts to develop in-depth critical analysis for investment in convention centers, amateur sports complexes, esports, entertainment districts, and other destination developments. Tyler leads a convention, sport, and leisure research efforts regarding the future of the events industry, focusing on the emergence and growth of a variety of new event sectors and facilities. Given those credentials and experience, we're waiting with great anticipation for Tyler to provide his findings. Take it away, Tyler.
Thank you, Kevin. And the test 1, 2, 3. Good on audio. Oh.
And people to get up and serve yourself as you would like as this proceeds. You won't be offended, and we can't let all that wonderful food go to waste. So go ahead. Thank you.
There's a lot of data in here. You might need to take a break every once in a while. We don't want to overload you or anything. So I just want to kind of introduce the process and the whole, what does a convention district study mean? So this is actually an update to an effort that we did back in 2017 with Kevin, looking at the real estate around the convention center. So with at that time, the recently developed convention center, we had a great product. You know, it's still really nationally recognized as a great piece of architecture. We hear from regional, national convention planners that this is always a delightful surprise for them to come into town and experience the downtown and the building as well. That said, back in 2017, we were to look at how do we go even further and don't just think about the box, the convention center, but how do we plan around the box, so within a several block area, within a 10-minute, 15-minute walk time? What are the types of amenities that we need in real estate to best support a convention environment? A lot has changed since the 2017 study. We've had the pandemic, obviously. Even prior to the pandemic, there have been a number of changes going on in the convention industry. Planners are looking for more unique, authentic experiences. They're looking for outdoor event spaces when they're choosing the destinations to go to. So we wanted to look at it through that lens and also see what other communities are doing nationally in response to some of these trends in the industry. So this is going to be the kind of main areas of focus for the presentation. We do have I think it's about 50-page, 40 to 50-page report with Kevin that goes more into detail about some of these areas that we're going to be talking about. But we're going to talk a little bit about our analysis of comparable districts. So we benchmarked the same communities that we benchmarked back in 2017 to look at their convention districts, to look at the real estate and types of restaurants and other amenities that have maybe developed since then, see how we're keeping pace, to see what are maybe some gaps and areas for improvement for our destination product. Then we're going to get into some of the stakeholder comments that we also heard as well. So we spoke with, I believe, 40 or so different stakeholders, both in person. I came out here for a site visit, as well as virtually or over the phone, collected some good input about what people see as the opportunities and the gaps in Lancaster and how we can maybe go even forward, not just as a convention district, but downtown Lancaster. How can we continue to develop this as a destination? That's going to bring us to development opportunities. So that means a few different things. That means improving this building, actually this very space that we're in. I'm going to talk a little bit about opportunities to evolve this for today's convention industry. I'm going to talk about the site across the street, the Swan Hotel site. That's actually a parcel we control the destiny of. So how can we plan for that to best position us for both the convention, leisure industry, but also as a quality of life asset right across the street. And I'm going to talk about connectivity, so developing ways to connect this district to some of the stronger areas elsewhere throughout downtown through wayfinding and placemaking. Then I'm going to get into the downtown investment district analysis. So when it comes to, yes, we have the ideas for developing this convention center, improving the real estate around it, but how do we best manage it? And so we did just a review of what the downtown investment district does today, and maybe what are some opportunities for that district to continue to play a role in best managing this experience for an attendee around the district. And then we're also going to get into, finally, the sales and marketing analysis. So with this evolving product, and to Kevin's point, we're breaking attendance records fairly soon after COVID, which is a really, really great sign. Still, a lot of our clients nationally aren't quite back up to pre-COVID attendance standards. So we have this product, we have downtown, which has only improved in recent years. How do we take that next step with sales and marketing and make sure that we're capturing the regional and national conventions that we have the potential to capture? So just to jump into the comparable analysis first. These are 4 markets that we selected, not just randomly out of a hat. They're based on population, so 30-minute drive time population for the most part. their CVSA populations, that's core-based statistical area, and then also the size of their convention centers. So some of these are bigger products than what we have here in Lancaster. Lexington, Little Rock, slightly bigger convention centers, but similar size populations. But they're all similar mid-size urban districts that there's a lot to learn from. Some of them are doing things right. Some of them have really, really interesting developments over these last few years. Some of them lack the authenticity and kind of cultural assets we actually have here in Lancaster. So I'm going to go through one by one each of these markets. I'm not going to go too in-depth with their history, but I'm going to start on each with a map, just an overview of their 0.3 mile area around their convention center. So 3 blocks, it's about a 10-minute walk. That's what we kind of call an apples to apples walkable area around your center. That's what maybe a typical attendee is gonna frequent when they're done with meetings or in between meetings, is that 10-minute area. So we're gonna look at those maps, but I'm mainly gonna focus on what's changed since 2017, and we have some slides just with some information about the key takeaways. So Little Rock, Arkansas, really slightly larger than the Lancaster area, but it is a desirable convention district, so to speak. It's right on the riverfront. You have walkable paths. You have a sculpture park right next to the convention center. You have this river arts market just down the way, so similar to our central market here. There's a lot to like, and it's all been there since 2017. Some of the key changes that have taken place. Let's see. There we go. Key changes, they've built 3 new hotel properties totaling about 500 new hotel rooms just within that walkable area. They used hotel tax to redevelop an auditorium that's a couple of blocks away from the convention center. 2,500 seats. Now that fixed seating venue is used for a lot of general sessions for the conventions that are in town at the State House Convention Center. They have a huge economic kind of placemaking transformational project where they'll be redeveloping this 4 clover type interstate design, turning it just into 2 entryways, so they're going to open up tens of acres of new green space in their downtown, and that's a walkable distance from their convention center. So they've already added hotels, they have a new fixed seating venue, their restaurants have grown more than any other markets, and now on top of that they have this transformational project that's going to increase the size of their downtown by a good 25%. Lexington, likewise, really undergone a lot of development since 2017. Their convention center has been redeveloped, slightly expanded. It's now been joined to the Rupp Arena right next door where University of Kentucky plays. But as part of that development, they created an outdoor beer garden kind of plaza event space that hosts tailgates for University of Kentucky games, but that can be activated by conventions that are in town. They can use that as their outdoor space for an outdoor general session or an outdoor cocktail hour. They have that option available to them. On top of that, they have a number of amenities that have been developed since 2017. So they've had 2 new hotel properties, about 300 new rooms, in addition to a new kind of 4 Seasons level type hotel property that's going to be built there, that's going to be very boutique, but also is going to serve the convention industry. They have Town Branch Park. It's a 10-acre urban park being built right next to the convention center, where they're going to have an amphitheater, sculpture garden, walkable trails. So this real piece of real estate where a convention attendee can go for a walk, go to a concert, and then to the west of that, they have this developing distillery district just beyond the 0.3 mile marker. So in addition to the number of amenities that are developing here, they also have these districts on the periphery that people can go to, and this has all happened in the last 5 years. They've also greatly increased their nightlife. Right across from their center, they actually have Lex Live that was developed on a piece of land. That's a movie theater, it's a bowling alley, it's a bar, it's an arcade. They also have live music that plays there. So it's a perfect post-game type space for University of Kentucky, but actually more often than not, when we spoke to the CVB there, they're actually getting more visitation from conventions that are in town. They had this sore need for a nightlife option. Just when we were doing a study there 5 years ago, that's been solved by this complex that's doing very well. In addition to that, it's kind of spurred a new nightlife scene. A number of bars and live music venues have popped up throughout the downtown and the district just over the last couple of years. Fort Wayne, Indiana, in short, probably has changed the least since our last 2017 study. This map remains fairly non-change. I think they actually lost some restaurants. They added one hotel, the Courtyard, right next to the convention center. So to just a surface review, it looks like they haven't made a lot of progress. But actually beyond these rings, to the south of here, just to the north of 0.3 miles, they've had more investment and changes going on than any of the markets. So to the north, they've had a development called The Landing that took a whole row, 2-block row of undeveloped lighted properties, turned them into kind of Brooklyn-style retail and dining on the first floor, residential and office on top, and then a pedestrian mall in the middle that can be closed off and hosted for festivals, street festivals, and parades. Just to the north of that, they did a $100 million investment on their riverfront. So now you can go to a bar on the riverfront, hop on a kayak, hop on a pedal boat that actually brings you down the river. So you have this whole day-long experience. Their problem now, going forward, is really connecting the convention visitor. So back in 2017, where the convention center is was sort of the epicenter of all their recent development. And it's right across from a minor league ballpark. A lot of new restaurants have been developed there. But now the real popular areas, tourism-wise, are north, and then also this 700,000 square foot electric works project just to the south of 0.3 miles. So we're actually doing a destination study in Fort Wayne, not just focused on the convention center, but on increasing visitation there in general. And now their main issue is trying to figure out how do you get convention attendees from the building to these surrounding nodes that are kind of the most desirable pieces of the destination. So we're talking to them about transportation, but also just creating a better pedestrian experience. So it's not necessarily the length, because it's probably 0.4 to 0.5 miles to both these assets, but now they're looking at ways to do placemaking and wayfinding with signs, public art, to guide attendees from the building to these new tourism-heavy areas of downtown. In addition to that, let's see. They're also looking at expanding the convention center to integrate with all this development that's going on downtown. So just to the west of the Grand Wayne Convention Center, they want to develop this new building that would be joined by a skywalk to the original building, where they would do a ballroom as well as real spacious, dynamic pre-function space. So sort of like this room, just maybe with 20-foot ceilings, large natural light windows. You'd actually have operable doors so you can do indoor-outdoor events. They envision this as being sort of a central theater for festivals for their downtown, not just conventions, but when a convention's in town, they can use that as sort of a food truck-like environment where they can do indoor activities and then go outside and enjoy the summer weather. Maybe there's a ball game across the street at the minor league ballpark. Then you build all the street wayfinding and public art that guides visitors from that location to the north and south. So they're figuring out this whole urban planning effort, just basically centered on the convention center and the convention attendee. And then finally, Boise. This was the one market we didn't look at in 2017, but it's one that's often talked about as a really great example of a mid-sized, small market destination that punches above its weight class for national conventions, small niche national conventions, because it is such a desirable experience. They get a lot of repeat business because of the walkability of Boise, because of the assets that are right around the center and a short walking distance away from the center. It's kind of designed to feed into 3 different areas of town. The Boise Center, you can go south to the zoo and the greenway that follows this path into the zoo. You can go west into Warehouse District, a bunch of redeveloped historic properties that have been turned into breweries, distilleries, or you can go north into the Central Business District. And they communicate that to attendees through district-themed wayfinding, again, public art. They have great pedestrian lighting to guide people's journeys going into the nighttime. And then they have a central plaza actually right here. So this is the Boise Center here. Central Plaza is right there that is shared by the Boise Center with the adjacent arena and private businesses, and they can periodically activate that plaza for conventions that are in town. So again, that outdoor theater space that they can use at night, they can use during the day, and then the pedestrian wayfinding and lighting kind of diffuses the events that are going on in that plaza to other areas of downtown, the greenway, the breweries, the bars in the Central Business District. And there's a lot of coordinated efforts between their business improvement district and the CVB to plan out these pedestrian experiences for the big citywide conventions that are in town, or the big arena concerts that are in town. So Lancaster, when you look at this map relative to the other maps that we've reviewed, it's looks fairly similar. I mean, there's even more restaurant dots, just visibly compared to some of the other markets. The restaurant inventory has grown slightly since the study we did in 2017, which was a really positive sign coming out of COVID. As far as what's changed in the destination, this is what we were looking at back in 2017. The map on the right shows parcels that were considered for development, and now I've color-coded them with a light purple versus dark purple. Light purple is showing those parcels that have already been accounted for, or plans are underway to redevelop them. So back in 2017, we were looking at the universe of convention districts and determined that this immediate block around the convention center, about 0.1 miles, is where we'd love to see real convention-focused investments, more restaurants, nightlife, entertainment, green space, public art. And then in the periphery is where you would typically develop residential, office space, those other types of amenities that are going to create demand for the restaurants, more shopping, and some of these amenities that would benefit the convention industry. For the most part, let's see. This thing has a mind of its own here. There we go. Am I controlling this? Nope. You got it. Gotcha. Okay. Cool.
Just so you know, somewhere along the line we realized that wasn't working and they had to take it.
That was very close. Yeah. I thought there was just a slight delay. So as far as the development that's taken place, in the periphery, for the most part, we've added residential. Obviously the Belova project and the Ewell Plaza, that is a huge, huge benefit for not just the convention industry, but quality of life in Lancaster. So this historic, long time, hadn't been touched asset is now creating demand with residential and having green space right nearby. We're enhancing vibrancy in the area. A number of these other residential projects to the north of us, again, going to create more foot traffic so that we can support more restaurants, more shopping, all those things that are benefit for the convention visitor. Right around us, obviously the Southern Market opening is a huge benefit. Food halls are a craze nationally and something that works really, really well for the meetings convention industry. When you talk about taking a lunch between meetings, having multiple options with your group, that always works well. There are also large open spaces where they're a perfect off-site venue. Maybe you don't want to do just another general session or cocktail hour in a lobby or a ballroom. You can go over there and use it for that type of use. So we love seeing that. The Mosaic project, Willow Valley, just across the way, we know that's more long-term, but there's some aspects of that project that really excited us. The above-ground outdoor space and lawn space, that's something that could be usable for our events here, just in thinking about all the other comparable destinations that now have the green spaces that are opening up. They're already using outdoor plazas for their large conventions. This is something that maybe we could think about coordinating use of going forward once that opens. But we're down to our one developable parcel just across the street. And there's a few gaps unaccounted for maybe in our convention district product that I'll talk about in a few slides. But we can move to the next one. This is a comparable chart we didn't do in the last report, but that gives us a black and white, just apples to apples analysis of our restaurant inventory. So I think the last time around we were second place. We're now tied for second place with Little Rock, Arkansas. We do have a fairly standard breakdown of our dining options. We have a great array of full-service restaurants, locally owned restaurants. That's something that stood out to us right away back in 2017, and it still seems to be doing well now. The one area maybe you could argue we fall short in, if we were to look at Lexington and Boise, these two destinations that I would argue are maybe the strongest reviewed by their conventions, they have the nightlife. They have more of an inventory of nightlife than we do. Lexington has less overall restaurants, but real strong nightlife option right around their center. Next slide. We also looked at the identities of these different downtowns. Is there a reason that we have differences in restaurants like we do? The walk time population and the walk time employees stood out to us. We have a high residential base. I think that's slightly something to do with the population that's to our south. We do have housings. It's not all the multi-unit housing that we're accounting for, but it does drive very high retail sales for us. So the retail industry, I think, is a real strength for this downtown compared to other similar sized urban centers like this. And that came out in the convention center user input. You know, the shopping, the art galleries stands out as a strength to them when they've come here in the past. Eating and drinking sales, even though we're tied for second, we're actually third in terms of the actual sales in millions of dollars. These are 2021 figures, so obviously we're still dealing with COVID times. But one thing that might be driving that is this employee base, which maybe if I did this count 3 years ago, we may be higher in the ranking. We understand that, you know, and this is the case in many downtowns around the country, there's a lot of businesses that permanently went to work from home, haven't brought their workers back, and it actually makes the restaurant industry suffer, especially around the lunchtime. So when we talk about lunchtime, obviously conventions are going to need that, and there's plenty of conventions that take place midweek. We know there's some limited hours, and that's going to be a challenge to overcome. But if we want to grow these figures, then you look at the convention industry, and then you look at maybe opportunities to add more office and residential. Next slide. So these are just the main takeaways, just from all this analysis. The improving districts. So even though Lancaster's come a long way in the last 5-6 years, so have these other mid-sized destinations. It's a trend nationally, the rise of the mid-size in the convention industry. There's a lot of markets this size that can punch above their weight class because they're safer, they're more navigable, while still offering the same urban amenities that, say, a Philadelphia or San Francisco can offer. But these conventions are now looking for maybe a downtown that's just a slower pace and that they feel like they're going to be treated just better because they're the big fish in town, and they're going to have the restaurants and the politicians, respond to them while they're in town. So always, and a standstill approach is something we want to avoid in the convention industry. So continue to evolve downtown. But another thing that stood out is all the center-adjacent planning that was going on in those markets. So in Lexington, they had Lex Live, the indoor entertainment district that's opening across their street. That's been a huge benefit for attracting conventions and getting repeat business, the experience there. Fort Wayne, Indiana, looking at developing a convention center expansion for an indoor-outdoor type building where they can do festival-type events. It would have technology in it so they could host esports and other emerging event types. So thinking about that for the Swan Hotel site, what is our unique opportunity to create this really desirable neighbor anchor for our convention business? Investments in parks and riverfronts. Each of these markets are really looking at the use of outdoor space for their convention events. Either it's right next to the building, or they're looking at partnering with Parks and Rec or their cities to do more outdoor events in the town. Nightlife, we fell a little bit short in nightlife, but we have an opportunity maybe to add that vibrancy at night. Maybe think about more live music opportunities. We're high in residential, and then we're low in employee base. So it's maybe good, bad. It is what it is. It would be nice to have more foot traffic for both. But in terms of residential, we know we're adding units. In terms of employee base, we still have maybe some pieces of land to add some office. So we can maybe elevate both those numbers to support restaurant retail. So, of course, that was the comparable analysis. We also did the outreach to about 40 different stakeholders, started hearing some of the same points of strengths, challenges, opportunities. In terms of strengths, the building itself, as I mentioned, it's seen really, really positively in the convention industry. We have a spacious exhibit hall to do what it needs to do in terms of national or regional events, maybe smaller national events, state events. We have a really, really scenic pre-function area, great lobby that can be used for events. That's more in demand in the industry. A lot of the planners we spoke with and a lot of stakeholders acknowledge we've come a long way. Downtown's a really, really desirable place to be. We got the restaurants, we have the bars now that we didn't have 10 years ago. So we can build on that. But how do we connect to that better? And that's something that a lot of people mention. In terms of challenges, there's a few challenges. Just as there would be with any product that's about 15 years old, can we think of ways to tweak for the future of this industry? That includes navigating, interior navigation, so through wayfinding, digital wayfinding. A lot of buildings are adding that now. Breakout space, there's a slight need for maybe more meeting rooms or a type of junior ballroom type space in this venue somewhere. We might be standing in the perfect use, the perfect way to address that problem. Parking wayfinding, and then also wayfinding outside the building during the nighttime. Some people felt a little bit unsafe, especially in this area of town, but even so, walking through other areas of downtown away from the building. So how can we think of lighting and ways to create a secure experience for the attendee? And then another challenge, that a strength and a challenge. A strength, we have great drive-in audience. We're by 100 million people or so within a 5-hour drive. But we don't quite have the airlift. We don't have the primary airport that's going to get us the huge national business. But that said, we can go for very, very large regional pieces of business, smaller national pieces of business. Next slide. Opportunities. This connects again with many of the strengths, but we have momentum as far as the southern market development, as far as convention events, the selective downsizing of convention events. They're looking for markets like us. Connectivity with downtown. How do we guide the pedestrian, the new convention attendee who's visiting Lancaster for the first time to some of these spots? And then convention off-site event locations was mentioned by a number of folks as well. So how can we get people from their meeting room to maybe hosting an event at one of the theaters, at one of the restaurants that we offer in downtown, and enhance those partnerships, make that a more frequent collaboration. And then some of the threats, we've already talked a little bit about that. That's the state of downtown office real estate. Maybe don't have enough office workers. It's going to affect our lunchtime hours. Is that going to affect our restaurant industry? Is that going to evolve in some kind of way? That's something that we have to be aware of. Competitive destinations, as I showed, some of those destinations we do compete with on some level for some of those national or regional shows. How do we continue to evolve just as they have? And then maintaining downtown authenticity. We don't want to just be another urban center like the competition we've looked at. We're Lancaster. We have huge, dense layers of history here. How do we showcase that with our developments? So all of this analysis from the stakeholders, from the comps, goes into some of these recommendations that we'll get into. Starting with this room. So the Commons on Vine space, well lit. It's laid out fairly well to maybe host comfortably 100 people, can be used for banquets. What we've, in speaking with Kevin and speaking with other stakeholders and doing our surveys of national convention planners, there's more of this demand for the meeting room outside of the meeting rooms. So no longer do they want to go to the static breakout rooms with no natural light. They want to be in a space that's unique, authentic to the destination, that they feel more open in, that they feel like is not just another ballroom that could be in any part of town and anywhere USA. So growing this space and thinking of ways, maybe working with architects to expand it a little bit more, we could work with this wall to expand from maybe 100, 150, 200 people to maybe more of a space for 250, 300. There would have to be more in-depth study. But creating a more open feel, and then also thinking of it as a real leading revenue generator. So if there's a way to actually use, I think there's sort of a warming kitchen already down this way. So connecting this to the warming kitchen, thinking it more as a frequent banquet space is going to be something that helps the bottom line of this building, yes, but also provides the customer, the attendee, with this real unique pocket of space that, I can't really think of many comps in other convention centers, but it's also going to mirror what's going on across the street and what the opportunity is over at Swan Hotel. You also have Southern Market. Obviously, we have the Stevens Historic Site. So we're this fourth corner that could really be activated to connect the attendee, whether it's for a local banquet or a visiting convention, into all these surrounding amenities. So we're talking about here some kind of space that might include unique, movable furniture. I wish I could make these pictures a little bit bigger, but this is San Antonio's cantilever room. This is sort of the meeting room of the future. Larger open space, lots of natural light, movable whiteboards, movable monitors, so it creates this really dynamic meeting environment. We could see that kind of business use for this. We could also see this as sort of an experience launch point, a destination launch point. So, imagine you're doing your cocktail hour after all of your meetings right here in this space. You can play beanbag toss. You might have ping pong tables all set up. It sounds a little kitschy, but this is what, as we have more millennials, Gen X, Gen Z becoming kind of the mainstays of the convention attendee base, We're starting to see demand for these spaces like Long Beach Convention Center. They have a space called the Cove, where they actually host ping pong nights, beanbag toss. They have food trucks drive up, and it becomes sort of this nighttime lounge space. And then they have a lit trail that's lit by beacons into other amenities kind of near the center. So here what we could see is, a visiting group actually starts their night here, and then maybe working with downtown ambassadors with the downtown investment district, or maybe staff here, they would get guided to, say, the Southern Market, and then they could do their own kind of self-guided bar crawl or art gallery visit tour, whatever they want to do in downtown, but it starts here. This would be something we could do in partnership with Discover Lancaster. This is something that would be sort of a central part of the branded experience of Lancaster when an event is in town. And, the bones are set up, the space is all right, but we could invest in the aesthetic a little bit more and get the furniture and the lighting that we need to really make this a real unique pocket of space, compared to some other facilities out there. Next slide. Then across the street. So the last piece of land that's still developable from our 2017 study. So we're looking at, okay, what still hasn't been developed since that study. And when we look back at our report, the one thing that maybe hasn't been addressed is the entertainment, the nightlife. I know there's live music in downtown, there's options for that, but could we develop something that's closer to the center for those attendees who would like to maybe go right out the door from a building and find a real viable option? So with any RFP, it's going to come down to the private partner who ultimately picks it up, develops the land, but we can control the destiny a little bit by putting some key principles in the RFP, the request for a proposal. So this is something we'd send out to developers to get their visions, their preliminary visions for how they would develop the space. But what we would like to see there that addresses some of those needs from the stakeholders, that puts us on the right path that we've seen from the comparable destinations, is some maybe boutique hotel-like product where you maintain the structure of the building, but think of ways to enhance the first floor and then develop the air rights over the parking lot to do this sort of mixed-use development where on the first floor you would have sort of maybe not a brewery per se, but that type of space. Taller ceilings, very active atmosphere. You'd have live music, maybe another space where there'd be some kind of interactive entertainment going on. I don't want to say put beanbag toss everywhere, but that space could maybe work as well. Something that's higher end, that's higher finish. You could have a jazz show type lounge environment could work in there as well that speaks to the history, the sophistication of the area. Again, something that would be really, really appealing to the convention visitor. And then on top of the air rights over on the surface lot over here, you have to give the developer his or her opportunity to get the ROI. So we need to think about office space, residential. But it'd be a shame if we just sell that space and it just becomes a generic office building with fast casual or a chain retail on the first level. We want to see something more unique, authentic. This is a very important point, and is going to be the most frequent point probably by convention visitors in the future. How do we tell them about the Lancaster destination the best way? Next page. So we have Commons on Vine, we have the development at Swan Hotel. Now how do we bridge the gap between the buildings from this district to other areas of downtown? How do we start defining districts throughout the downtown? I could be wrong. I don't think we'd have strong, arts versus entertainment versus convention districts here maybe yet. Not a lot of cities do, but it's a way to think about things. And with that, there's placemaking investments that could start to define districts. And that's through monumental public art. That's through themed wayfinding. The two of them could work together. In a lot of communities we've worked in, we recommend doing monumental public art, a landmark type piece that you can refer everybody to, and then you have a wayfinding program that ties back to that. So you could have, a statue of one of the founding fathers here. You could have Thaddeus Stevens. Maybe it's sort of this arts-inspired piece, lights up at night, right on the corner out here. Then there's wayfinding pieces that tie back to that imagery. Something like that's easy to read and intuitive like this. So you have this whole program kind of tied around that, and maybe you color the themed wayfinding different colors or styles based on the district it's in. So here's the convention district. Could we have a brewery district? Do we have an arts district? I mean, we have an art gallery row. So can we start thinking of themed programs like that? Other opportunities, the outdoor event space. Oh, just one more on the last page. Outdoor event space, we have the Mosaic opening up across the way. We have Ewell Plaza that had just opened up. How do we think of ways to open those up, not just once or twice per year for conventions, but make them really viable options for some of the citywide conventions we could host? How do we activate them to be public festival spaces? These are the types of uses we're seeing in those other towns. We don't really have that green space option here today in Lancaster. This is tech, so tech forward type placemaking and wayfinding. So beyond just your public art, your street signs, this is responding to those stakeholders who commented that it doesn't feel safe at night, it could feel tough to navigate downtown after 6 p.m. So a lot of these are to address that problem, like pedestrian lighting, like nighttime installations. Both of these pictures here are from the Minneapolis's Nicollet Mall. It's just a walkable mall in their downtown. Just pieces of art that light up at night. It's a huge placemaking enhancement. It's something that obviously you start to create this sense of a district. You start to create this sense of a safer journey from point A to point B. This is something we'd like to see, at the Southern Market site, at the Swan Hotel site, just outside the door here. We start to define this as this lit up at night sort of entertainment convention district. And this is something we've seen in Lexington. This is something that Fort Wayne is now planning. So can we become more of this 24/7 vibrant environment that's going to be great, not just for convention visitors, but this is a great quality of life piece as well for trying to attract residents here. In addition to that, we did speak with City's Public Art Department to talk about projection mapping. They're already talking a little bit about this. The idea of using a projector to map out different surfaces, and you can actually have full murals or lifelike environments. The technology's really advanced and become cheaper that a lot of smaller markets, mid-sized markets are starting to do this. That could be a great placemaking enhancement, maybe periodically throughout the year. You could have it on the facade of this building, maybe some of the historic buildings nearby. So we're creating this nighttime atmosphere. And in addition to that, we have some of these other maybe longer-term technology investments like Kiosk 3.0, so some of these motion-based interactive kiosks, so not just your touch-based, classic touch-based kiosks that you used to see. AR wayfinding, I know there's been talks of an app of something that could guide your experience using your phones. You could actually have beacons that bring you to different spots of interest throughout the town. Electric shuttling, this is something that we've started to see in markets like Plymouth, Massachusetts, where actually their CVB operates a micro shuttle program. You use an app, it's free, so they actually get their revenue from local ads, local companies advertising billboards on the vehicle. Maybe not something that fits with Lancaster's brand today, but as it becomes safer, more efficient, this is something that could help that journey from the convention center to maybe a half mile to a mile down. So those are all the development ideas, the connectivity, developing our key parcel, improving the commons on Vine and the building. We also looked at ways to manage, maybe increase traffic flow as we grow the convention business here. How do we manage the increased resident base? As there's more residential, sure, we have a shorter amount of workers in the area, but they're only in the area for 8 hours a day. Now we have a resident base who's here 24/7. Here's the typical hierarchy of downtown investment district functions on the right. It's sort of the Maslow hierarchy of needs. As your budget goes up, you're able to fulfill these different roles. When we first started this engagement and we were looking at the DID, we were obviously looking at, okay, it cleans and maintains safety, but it doesn't do the other functions, but of course that's handled by a set of other organizations, including Loop, including the City Alliance, including LEADS. So there's this fragmented approach to get all these things done, but that has proved to be successful in the past. The only initiatives that we found that maybe comparable markets employ that we don't do here are listed in this box on the left. Show your badge programs. So when a convention is in town, they might have an app, they might have a badge they can show to restaurants and local businesses where they get discounts. Their business improvement districts sometimes handle those. Fort Wayne, Boise, they manage those programs. Spotify streaming services. So in Boise, they actually have their own channel on Spotify, and they work with the CVB on figuring out which conventions are coming into town, so they can actually use Spotify service to send those people ads of the Boise playlist. They actually advertise the Boise playlist on the street too, so that visitor can now download the music of Boise, and it's bands and music that originated in Boise. The ambassador focus on convention attendees. Lexington and Boise both ramp up their services and actually enlist volunteers to help manage an incoming convention, so they temporarily grow their service. Fort Wayne is focused on mitigating all the development construction that's going on. They're creating temporary art programs that actually covers up some of these construction zones, that guides attendees around these construction zones. So they'll have interactive pieces of art like these small carousels that you can actually use. They'll have photo opportunities for selfies, statues that are unique to the area. And then you have public art assistance and coordination. So Lexington and Fort Wayne both work with their cities on figuring and coordinating with artists on the types of murals they want, sculptures, mosaics. They work on a variety of other public art projects, and they help spearhead that. So on the next page, the downtown investment district, for what it is, fulfills its functions for a pretty large downtown area that's a little bit larger than the other comparable districts that we looked at. To account for this added residential and the new convention attendees that will be coming as we grow the business going forward, we do support their 5-year plan that just evaluates some moderate ways to increase their funding in terms of millage rates, in terms of communicating to nonprofits who are exempt from contributing to their fund. Maybe there's more of a communication of what their added payment would bring in terms of added labor, added hours they could bring in. We do think there's a need for more of a focus on when large conventions are in town for ambassadors to cater to some of these residents to help guide them to different restaurants, retail spots, and spots of interest. In the midterm, in 2 to 4 years, let's maybe think about some of those initiatives. When we have a higher budget, especially from projects like the Mosaic and other residential projects, now we can think about some other services, other programs we could engage in. Maybe it's not a long-term, maybe it's a 1-year trial for some of these programs that we found, but we think there's ways to cater to not just the convention visitor, but the leisure visitor. And the Spotify service is something that would really appeal to someone who's just driving in, checking out the art galleries. And if you're in your 20s, you use Spotify all the time, that's a great little marketing piece for them while they're here. And then long term, 4+ years, it kind of jumped out to us in terms of how many people are involved in promoting and managing and in maintaining the downtown. In many communities, it's one entity like Grand Action in Grand Rapids is this super entity that maintains and leads development, sells real estate, while employing a group of people who do the clean and safety, and that kind of approach. We don't think there's a need to consolidate and create just one organization, but if there's more synergies, more coordination, perhaps through strategic planning, maybe there's ways to instead of a siloed approach, we could create this real coordinated effort to maintain, manage, promote downtown, especially in a way that caters to the convention attendee and makes them feel like, the downtown has been activated for them while they're here. The sales and marketing piece. So again, another unusual approach here in Lancaster, not unheard of. We do work in Palm Springs, California, Palm Beach, Florida, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where the building is kind of left to sell and market for themselves in a large part, where we have, I think, just under what you'd say 3 full-term equivalent employees. Yeah, who sell and market the convention product here. And then we have the CVB, who is in charge of marketing the entire county, has hotels to obviously sell as well in addition to this, but they play more of a support role. That's exactly how it is in Palm Beach and Palm Springs. In these other markets that have this, sometimes they'll have even just one sales or marketing person, at the building. But that said, then the CVB will have a much stronger focus on selling it. So in thinking about the approach here, maybe there's a little bit less than 3 full-time equivalent employees who sell and market the building. Maybe there's one or just over one type of like full-time equivalent employee who helps us from the CVB. In comparison, a lot of markets we work with, if it's just 1 or 2 people who market the convention center, there's maybe a staff of 10 group salespeople at their CVB, and then 50% of their focus is on the convention center product, sometimes even more, 50 to 75%. So just doing the math, you get about 5 to 6 people from the CVB plus the 1. So maybe they have 7 or 6 or 7 full-time equivalents. Not to get too math heavy, but in our opinion, I think there's a need for more of a support in just promoting the strengths of this building and downtown Lancaster to the national convention industry and those folks who are looking for great citywide experiences. That role, one of the roles that we could bring in that we'd love to see either at the CVB or maybe in-house here at the building would be some sort of destination experience manager. So somebody who could negotiate and communicate with restaurants, with attractions, with music venues, on figuring out opportunities for events that are in town to do off-site experiences at those types of businesses, to do maybe special events, scavenger hunts, pub crawls, bar crawls, those types of itineraries, those prepackaged type experiences. It's a role we've seen over the last 5 years really develop. It's either called a destination experience manager or destination development director. That could bridge the gap between this building and some of these key attractions, not just in downtown, but throughout the county. And then continuing to strengthen just the partnership in recent years. I think there's been more and more coordination between the convention center team and Discover Lancaster. Do we think about formalizing that more? We've seen some success with that in markets where it's the building and more of a county CVB. Maybe it's monthly meetings, just talking about shared leads, and then it's a quarterly meeting where you talk about, okay, how do we strategically plan, how to improve our approach? That's not something that we formally do today, but something we could think about visiting in the future. But overall, the approach in terms of how we're filling the building today is very, very impressive. But I think it's about taking that next step that a lot of these other comparable communities have and start to show off the urban experiences here. We just need more resources to do it. And implementation. So we have in the report just a call out of the timing, who the involved implementers would need to be for each of these initiatives. Here's the 13 recommendations just on terms of different timelines. Some of these are very short term. The issuing the RFP, let's get that done in 1 to 2 years and start acting fast, really redevelop SWAN. And then in the next 2 to 3 years, we think of, okay, finding an opportunity, maybe it's at SWAN for another nightlife or type late experience development. And then there's very long-term opportunities. Actually, one I didn't mention in 10 plus years might be the idea of this building was designed to support a rooftop space. Do we actually think of a rooftop outdoor type courtyard? So that's our outdoor space that puts us on the level of some of these other convention centers that have adopted that. And then ongoing, some of these things like improving the sales and marketing, improving the pedestrian experience, identifying event spaces outdoors. There's no finite timeline for that, but it's something to keep in mind as the convention industry continues to evolve that we'll continue to monitor and track. There's a little bit more detail on the stakeholders involved for each task, actually in the full report that Kevin has a draft of, but we won't get into that much detail for now. But that's the full content. There's more detail, obviously, in the report, but happy to field some questions now.
Comprehensive, a lot of information to take in a very short period of time. However, we'd like to allot some time for questions. Kevin has a mic. He's going to make sure everyone can hear your question and the answers. Questions, anybody?
Judy, let me give you this.
Woo.
May we get some of the materials that you had posted up there?
I believe so. If it's okay with Kevin.
So on the website, the full 40-page report that was referenced tonight will be on the website. If not tomorrow, the day after. Guaranteed. I'd be glad to email you all a link to that too.
Other questions? Yeah, Marshall.
So you mentioned that you're starting to see record attendance and record conventions again, right? So I don't know if it was part of the scope, but do we have enough hotel rooms downtown?
It's a great question. I mean, if you look at it just from a comparison of the downtowns we looked at, it would look fairly low. I think we probably have the lowest inventory of everybody, maybe other than Fort Wayne. On a national level, when we think of a space like this, if we were to do a ratio of its event space to hotels, we would be pretty short by industry standards. That's why the hotel idea over at Swan, I think, would help address that, but who knows, maybe that's 40 to 60 rooms. I'm not quite sure what would fit at that site. But long term, I think other hotels, there's going to be demand for that, I think, as the industry continues to grow.
This is a comment more than a question. I'm Robin Surratt with Lancaster History, so the Stevens and Smith Center. And I would refer back to the second to last or the last slide where you have the timeline of potential benefits. I think the relationship that's already in place between the Marriott, the Convention Center, and the Stevens and Smith Center has a lot of potential to add to some of the midterm opportunities. Zenkai Con emailed me this morning and wanted to know if they could get in there in March. So I think that the word is out there, even among the conventions that are already coming, that there's a new opportunity on deck.
Yeah. Leveraging that for different historical societies and even just history or culture adjacent associations is going to be big. That could be several conventions a year right there, just having that asset.
Following up on that question, Tom Ryan from Lancaster History also. Of the other sites that you did as comparables, how much or to what extent does history play a role as an attraction in those various sites? Mm-hmm. Are there any either major history museums or components to the opportunity for visitors that really focus squarely in on history?
I think that's if we were to look at just opportunities for a theme, I think that's a way to stand out here, just Lancaster in general. This asset is going to be probably the best museum experience of any of them that we reviewed in terms of when we got the tour and kind of learned about just how high-tech, how immersive this is going to be, its ability to be used as event space. That's going to be a really, really great asset. Mary Todd Lincoln House in Lexington is obviously tons of visitation, but it's not so much this interactive exhibit. Beyond that, there's history museums in each of those cities we reviewed in the Convention Center District, but it's not their selling point. So I think we have a theme to hang our hat on, as opposed to Fort Wayne still kind of trying to figure out their identity. Lexington's college basketball, they know that, but I think we have a real key strength that appeals to great associations with I don't want to get into the economics, but affluent member bases. Those folks who are looking for kind of the sophisticated experience, like this type of exhibit built in right here.
Another topic that I've become aware of a little bit more as we've begun to design this site is the potential for African American family reunion business. It used to be, from what I'm told, that folks would just bunk in with family members for those kind of reunions. Now they want to go first rate with great hotels, good dining, and then some cultural opportunities. Are there other locations where you see that kind of homecoming family reunion activity being a magnet at all?
Yeah, but I'm thinking of some markets like Augusta, Georgia. Savannah is obviously really successful in doing that kind of market. Greenville, South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina. Other than Savannah, we have a really, really great, desirable district around here that has probably more dining options, that has the shopping, the galleries. I think we have a really, really great experience for those types of events for what they're seeking now. In the reunions market and the other types of social markets, as well as the association.
I'm going to touch on your SWOT analysis talking about the airlift or the shortage of it. We have a nice train, Amtrak coming by. We seem to do well with the infrastructure of roadways, highways, to be a rubber tire market. You hit the 100 million people within a 3-hour drive and all those sort of things. I don't see air traffic being a short-term solution on the way with what we have and the distance we can draw for that rubber tire market. Is it really a weakness or just means it's strategic in how we market to get our fill here?
Yeah, I think it's the identity of who we are. There's tons of business and more business, I think, than there was 10 years ago in the drive-in market. As I talked about, these national shows are looking to be maybe a bit more regionalized and go to smaller markets. You know, the real heavy airlift shows are the huge national conventions. That's not going anywhere. And corporate, you know, big national corporate shows. And I don't think maybe we're in the local corporate market, but I wouldn't necessarily say we're going to have an opportunity for the national corporate market. So when it comes to your point, the social events, the historic societies, you know, they're usually on, at least the event organizers are on a budget. So it is about paying your own way to get to the show. And I think there's a bigger market than ever for that audience.
Do we have any questions from our friends with Ambridge?
Some people say you lost a step. I don't believe it. Tyler, one quick question. You gave a lot of strategies and tactics. This is sort of a loaded question, but if there was one thing you would say would be the first thing we should be doing based on this study, I know there are a lot of things, but what would you say would be the first thing we should start doing?
Well, in the timeline, we talked about just issuing the RFP, right, for the Swan Hotel site. But beyond that, I think a main takeaway is to look at just the competitive advantage we have with our restaurant inventory, the unique assets we have now, and really get serious about, I guess, marketing that to conventions and thinking about, in collaboration with Discover Lancaster, that we have this key strength, this urban experience that goes away from the horse and buggy brand, you know, that we've had for a long time. Doesn't necessarily eliminate it, but for the convention market, that's what they want to know, is that we have this great welcome mat, you know, this very, I'll call it a digestible urban experience that a lot of different events are looking for. You know, and we've done surveys of event planners of different markets. The familiarity rate with Lancaster is very low. People know of the market, but they actually don't know what the experience is like. In terms of tactics and whatnot, I think it's about grouping together and thinking of, okay, how do we really showcase this now?
Do we have any other questions? Well, I'm personally going to say that Convention Sport and Leisure has been in town a couple of times. The first time in 2011, very helpful in understanding the CRIS and the addition of the CRIS in our community, which has been helpful to this building, to the collaboration agreement that came out in mid-2015, and all of the other fine things we've had from Convention Sport and Leisure. I'm hoping that we have the same success with what you rolled out here tonight and adopting here in Lancaster to get the best out of this asset. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
everyone. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Thank you for doing this in an hour, a lot, to pass out to people. It will be on our website, and Kevin is always eager to talk about it. So thanks again for coming, and grab something on your way out, please. Good night.
Thank you all for